Let's get to what we're here for. The 27th class into the Indiana State Athletics Hall of Fame. If you return your attention now to the video screens, our first inductees, the 1968 mile relay team consisting of Tom Walters, Rich Rardin, Errol White, and Peter Howe. At Indiana State, track and field has always set the bar high when it comes to being the best. That bar was set by four gentlemen who put their athletic ability to the ultimate test each meet. The 1968 mile relay team, consisting of Rich Rardin, Peter Howe, Errol White, and Tom Walters, went undefeated during the 68 outdoor track season and became a finalist in the NC2A National Championship.
I think the thing that made them the most special was they were such good friends among themselves, and they'd push each other in discussions and on the track. And we got so friendly that when we'd go to an out-of-state meet, we'd all had to eat together so we could visit. And they were good people and very good students, and the last to leave practice.
This group of men set a new school record with a time of 3 minutes, 12 seconds, .7, capturing the ICC Conference Championship, the Central Collegiate Conference outdoor title, which included all of the Big Ten and Mid-American Conference schools, along with other major independents. They were also the Big State champions and IU Relay champions. They set 6 school records in their time at Indiana State.
I think they were highly competitive. They just did not want to get beat, and they didn't very often, as you can say. We used to kid about, having the mile relay as always the last event, and we always saved the best for last.
4 men who are the ones who set the bar high for Indiana State track and field are now members of the Indiana State Athletics Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, the newest members of our Hall of Fame, the 68 mile relay team. 3 of them are with us here this evening. Tom Walters, Rich Rardin, Errol White, please come and accept your induction into the Hall of Fame. Sherrod. Sherrod.
On behalf of Errol and Rich, we first want to thank the university, the athletic department, especially athletic director Sherrod Clean-Scales, and the Hall of Fame committee for selecting us into the Athletic Hall of Fame. To be included in a group that includes John Wooden, Larry Bird, Olympic gold medal winner Kurt Thomas, as well as our fellow teammate Mike Hanna, who in 1967 became the first Indiana State athlete in any sport to win a national championship in the pole vault, is a tremendous honor and very humbling. Make it even more special, our selection comes from one of the most successful sports programs at Indiana State, in addition to being one of the most successful track and field programs in the country, as evident by the fact ISU's track program has produced over 120 NCAA All-Americans and 15 NCAA national champions. But at this time, there's a couple of other people we want to recognize and thank. First, as everyone knows, the mile relay team is comprised of 4 individuals and not 3 as you see standing here. The 4th member of our team, not here, is Peter Howe. Pete came to Indiana State as the National High School 400-meter champion of England. After running 4 years at Indiana State, graduating with honors with a double major in business and finance, Pete moved to Australia and secured a seat on the Sydney Stock Exchange. After living in Australia for a year, while continuing his track career, Pete moved back to England and made England's Olympic team in the 400 as an alternate. To this day, Pete continues to rank in the top 5 at Indiana State regarding the fastest time in the 400. Anyone that knew Pete would be quick to say, and having shared an apartment with Pete for 2 years, which was an education in itself, I would agree. Pete was a lone wolf. that marched to a different drummer. As evident by the fact, for the 3 summers during his summer breaks, Pete visited every state in the United States hitchhiking. Unfortunately, and not because we haven't tried, we've been unable to locate Pete, and that search is still continuing. Hopefully we'll be able to find him. We also would like to thank our coach, Bill Malloy, for his guidance and leadership. Coach Malloy continued to always raise the bar while challenging us to achieve our ultimate goal that year of being NCAA national champions, which we believe was very attainable, as evident by the fact not only were we undefeated going into the national finals, we had also posted the fastest time of any team in the nation. Unfortunately, because of a hamstring injury that occurred to Pete a couple of days prior to leaving for the Nationals in California and not having an alternate, thinking Pete's injury would not hinder his ability to perform once we got out there, the goal of achieving our national championship actually was not ever to happen, and it was a tremendous disappointment to all of us. However, our selection tonight into the Hall of Fame erases any disappointment from not achieving our ultimate goal that year of becoming national champions. I'd also be remiss if I didn't, on behalf of everyone standing here, thank our parents. Having had the good fortune of meeting them, including Pete's, when he and I visited England, I know they all would have been very proud of our accomplishments and thrilled we received such a tremendous honor from the university. I know I speak for everyone when I say our selection reflects the dedication, hard work, and commitment to excellence that each gave to achieve a common goal. We're very proud of the success and accomplishments we achieved and very blessed to have been part of a relay team with such talented and gifted runners. Looking back 50 years to 1968, what a wonderful journey as a team we shared together. Our emotions and thoughts regarding our accomplishments can best be summed up in the lyrics of a song, ironically also written in 1968 by Paul Simon, that goes like this: "A time it was, and what a time it was the best of times." Again, thanks to the university for this tremendous honor.
Gentlemen, congratulations and welcome to the club. Again, your attention to the video screen, our next inductee into the 27th class, Mr. Bob Elson. When you think of the word valuable in athletics, it's usually surfaced for the player or coach who does either exceptional on the playing surface or is that true team leader. As for Bob Elson, he may have been the most valuable person in his 39 years of service to Indiana State. A native of Brazil, Indiana, Bob served a 3-year stint in the U.S. Army after high school and then received his bachelor's degree from ISU in 1973. After serving as an assistant equipment manager for a few years, Bob was named head of equipment in 1983.
There is nobody else that you could even talk about that would compare to Bob Elson when it comes to the effect that he's had on Indiana State, but in particularly football. I mean, you're talking, John, you're talking almost 4 decades, over 4 decades, the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s, that Bob had an effect on people.
He worked extremely long and extremely hard hours, and most importantly, he loved the kids. He loved Indiana State, he loved the kids. Regardless of where you were in the pecking order, whether you were the best player on the football team or the newest walk-on, he treated you like you were his own.
Bob is like a grandfather to me. I would claim him as my family. For the last 7 years that I've been here, he's bought me a birthday cake on my birthday and brought it into me, even after he retired. He always, we stay in contact. He's such a great person, and I learned so much. I learned most of what I know now from him.
Bob ran one of the best equipment rooms in college football, with many of his former students and graduate assistants moving on to the NFL and college equipment rooms across the country. But it was his loyalty to Indiana State that makes Bob Elson the valuable man.
This was not just a job to Bob. I mean, I don't know how many times he said he was going to retire. I'm retiring. And then the next thing you know, he's back the next year in some capacity, you know, and because to me, that's what he loved to do. He loved football, he loved Indiana State football, and he cared about those kids more than anybody that's ever been around this program.
I think it's a deserving honor because he did his job for 40 years, or 38, or however many he did them, with a smile on his face. And he, obviously this is a very stressful job, and he did it with poise.
As valuable as they come, Bob Elson is now a valuable member of the Indiana State Athletics Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, the newest member of the Hall of Fame, Mr. Bob Elson.
I would like to thank the Hall of Fame Committee, Dr. Curtis, for this great opportunity. I never in my wildest dreams thought I would be here. This university has treated me with nothing but respect. And I just got a few words here. I hope it doesn't go too long. But I worked most of the sports on campus. I started out, I worked for baseball, worked for Coach Warren and a player named Mitch Hannes. And when that year we went on to the World Series in 1986, which I had the privilege of going to. And in softball, I drove the bus for softball. I drove to Atlanta, Georgia during the Olympics. I don't know how I made it, but I did. And then I drove all the way to places like Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. But I also enjoyed this too. Basketball, I started out, I worked for Coach Green the same year that we got into the fight with Wichita State. So Coach Green told me to keep the players in the locker room, but half the team was in the locker room, so it's hard to keep them without going out on the floor, since they were all about 6'8". And I wanted to mention Coach Lansing. When I was in Florida on vacation, Coach Lansing called me on my cell phone and told me that he got the head coaching job at Indiana State. And I think I still got that message on one of my old phones, but I love that man. He's really treated me with great respect, and I just wanted to mention that. And women's basketball, I mostly drove the bus for Coach Myers, who was AD for a while. And I drove over to places like Drake and Northern Iowa, and that was some adventures on driving all the women. And in track and field, I started with Coach Malloy, and then from there I worked for two of the best coaches in the United States, Coach McNichols and Coach Gartland. You couldn't find two finer men. And after that, they hired the lady that I hope they'd hire in Angie Martin. And she'll carry the tradition on because she's a great lady. Soccer, I started working with soccer when it moved out to football. And I was with Coach True, and it was a pleasure working for her. She was always friendly and cordial to me, and I really appreciated it. I was originally hired to be the third man for football. When the head equipment manager left for basketball, then you had two managers working football. Coach Harp was the first coach I worked under, and then in 78 and 79, they hired Coach Jameson, who one of his assistants was Coach Race. And then in 1980, they hired Coach Race as head coach until 1997. Then I got the great opportunity to work with Coach McGuire, and then after that, it was Coach West who ran on some bad luck, and we didn't have very good seasons. We had to longest losing streak in the nation. So he was finally replaced with Coach Race again. And then after Coach Race, they hired Coach Miles, who had a lot of successful seasons. He was very good to me also. I guess some of my best stories in football is we were at Northern Iowa, and I got a flag on me on the sideline. And Coach Race said, "What'd you say, Bob?" And I said, "Well, I didn't say anything, Coach. I just told him he made the wrong call." And after he watched the film, it was a different story. So what I said can't be repeated here in mixed company. I didn't think I'd get through this. And then another game, we were playing Northern Iowa at home, and I got in a little dispute with one of the referees. And security came and escorted me off the field. And my grandson was with me, and he pretended like he didn't even know me. As we know, football is the games of high and lows. Some of the lows when we lost to Middle Tennessee State in 4 overtimes, and in the playoffs, and that was heartbreaking. I know for Coach Race it was, and for members of the team. And then another bad loss is when we lost to Tulsa for the conference championship. If we had won that game, we'd automatically made we would have had a higher seed in the playoffs. And some of the high points is the year we beat Cincinnati and Ball State at the Hoosier Dome. In 1 year, when we beat those two schools, that was really an outstanding job by Coach Race. And then beating Louisville when Kurt Bell intercepted the pass and had an offensive lineman catch him before he got 10 yards. And then with Coach Miles, when we beat North Dakota State, they had the longest winning streak, and we beat them at the Fargo Dome, which they rarely lost there at all. And I just want to mention, I worked with Coach Race for the longest in football, and he was really considerate to me. He never got mad at me. He got mad at a few other people, but he never got mad at me. And I remember one game was Youngstown State game, it was in November, and my grandson was born that day, and I missed the bus because I went to the hospital. And then I guess he asked, "Well, where's Bob at?" And one of the players said, "Well, his grandson was being born." And then Coach Ray said, "Oh, well, I won't say what goes on." And I remember one time early in my career, I was late for doubles practice. And Walt Pugh opened up for me. And Coach Ray still didn't get mad at me, he just kind of laughed at me. What it was I threw a bachelor party for my brother, but he never showed up. So we had to finish all the alcohol, so I was a little bit late. I like to recognize some of the people I work with. Assistant coaches, Sean Payton, who's now head coach of the Saints. Dave McGinnis, who was head coach of the Cardinals for a while. And two of my favorites, Coach Ritter and Coach Smith. Coach Smith I knew since he worked for Rose Hallman. And there's not a finer man that I can think of than Coach Smith. I mean, he treated me with the utmost respect. I think he only got mad at me one time, but still, he treated me great. And then my student managers, I got a long list, I got to name some of them. Tom James, John Montgomery, Kaneko Hines, who is the equipment manager for the Baltimore Ravens, John Bewley, Jeff Black, Alicia Kasser, Elliot Dieters, Stacy Estay, Molly McGuire, Rachel Stenick, Nick Young, Paul Mang, Sean Mang, and Aaron Mang. I got the whole family. Kristen Adams, Andrew Rhymes, and then Whitney Neal, and then my granddaughter was also for 1 year, which was nice, under Coach Miles. And I have to mention the custodial workers too, because they did everything they could possibly do for me, Karen and Sue. I got a lot of lists. Have I got time? I'd like to mention a few of the trainers: Dr. Binky, Rick Shaw, Dave Ralston, Amanda Mang, Morgan Picken, and Mitch Waskin. And sports information, Ace Hunt and Rob Irwin. My fellow workers, AG Joe McMillan, Dr. Tanya Sawyer, Dr. Kathy Baker, Patty Smith, Donna Bell, Stacy Green, Walt Pugh passed away, Dennis Drake, and strength coach Dave McManus. And head of the Sparkettes, Tammy, can't forget her. And I was asked to name two of my favorite players. It's kind of hard when you have thousands of them. But I'd have to say Troy Johnson, because his parents introduced me to my wife, which is, yeah, I have to put him on there. And the other one is Steve Elmendler, who married my niece. So they'd be the two. You can't do this job without having a great support system. I'd like to thank my wife, Marilyn, daughters, Carol and Tish, grandchildren, Bobby, Courtney, Tyler, and his wife, Jen, Hannah, Dylan, my brother, Mike, my son-in-laws, Rick and Brad, and my nephew, Cole. And in closing, you can tell how much that I care for this place and how much they care for me. When my mother died in 2009, I was in Brazil at the funeral home, and Coach Miles drove a busload of football players, and they all came to the visitation, and just seeing them made a day that was really, it was really rough. It really made it bearable. And I would like to thank President Curtis. I'd like to thank the Hall of Fame Committee, AD Sherrod Klingscale, Senior Associate AD Angie Lansing, who wrote a letter to me when I retired called Ode to Bob, and Senior Assistant AD John Sherman and his lovely wife. And all I can say is this: I thank you from the bottom of my heart that you would consider me for this great honor. Thank you.
Bob, the Missouri Valley Football Conference officials say you're no longer allowed on the sidelines. Our next inductee into the 27th class of the Indiana State Athletics Hall of Fame, Mr. Steve Newton. Many coaches have used the phrase, he's like a coach on the floor. And at Indiana State in the early 60s, there'd be a picture of Steve Newton right next to that phrase. A Terre Haute Gersmeyer graduate, Steve helped the Sycamores reach the NAIA National Tournament in 1962 and 1963. A guy who had speed to turn the corner and always knew where his teammates could be successful, Newton was the calming influence in guiding the Sycamores. When his time came, Steve could take over a game. His best one, a 26-point, 6-rebound, 0-turnover performance against Butler in January of 1963.
You know, we grew up in the north end of town together, went to Gersmeyer together, And so he knew what I needed. But he was always a great guy you could talk to him, what we're doing here, what we hope to do, and he could pretty much do whatever you needed. I mean, the coaches, I'm sure, always thought he was that kind of guy. You know, you need a guy on the team like that.
Steve was a very unique individual. He probably the most versatile, consistent player I ever coached at generously 6'2". So it sort of forced him into playing in the front line, and I tell you what, he rose to the occasion greatly. He was, for his size, an outstanding rebounder.
That coach on the floor took to coaching after graduation, winning 116 games as a head coach in Murray State, including 4 conference titles and 3 tournament titles. He would later serve as athletics director at Southern Indiana and was part of the regional advisory committee at the Division II level.
Yeah, he was probably going to be a coach. You know, he just had that. He always had that feel to him, and he was always very serious about doing what we needed to do. You know, he didn't screw around much. He was really conscientious, and coaches like that.
Steve Newton, the player that everyone trusted, is now a trusted member of the Indiana State Athletics Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, the newest member of the Hall of Fame, Mr. Steve Newton.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Mr. John Sherman, President Curtis, Mr. Clink Stales. I'd like to introduce my family first and foremost. My wife, Kathy. The best coach's wife one could ask for. We honeymooned at the 72 NCAA Final Four in Los Angeles. And have each year celebrated the anniversary at the Final Four. I would also like to introduce our 3 wonderful sons. And their wonderful families. ISU was the source of my foundation to teaching and coaching. It was here at ISU that I experienced some very significant emotional events that changed my life. A famous sociologist, Morris Massey, defined significant emotional events as something that has the capacity to change your perspective in life, your value system, and to change your view of the world. There were several of these in my case, but a few really stand out to me, and I remember them as if they happened yesterday. One significant emotional event was during my freshman year. I suffered what appeared to be a career-ending knee injury, the cruciate ligament tear. This was before corrective surgery was taking place. Thankfully, ISU had a very gifted trainer in Mel Blickenstaff. He rehabbed me in 5 months, and I came back on the court bigger, stronger, and jumping much higher. Another significant emotional event occurred in my sophomore year. It was at the ISU University of Evansville game in Roberts Coliseum with 9,000 fans in attendance. There were 5 minutes left in regulation when Coach Klee called number 33 get in the game, which I warmed up for Larry Bird, who made it famous later on, as you know. This was my first varsity game, and we go 2 overtimes and win 105-102. You remember that one, Coach? I was very fortunate to have been coached by Dwayne Klee. He was so fundamentally sound and demanded intensity and coached the transition game, which was his name of the game. I'd like for Coach to stand and be recognized again for one of the great coaches that we've ever had here, Coach Dwayne Klee. The last significant emotional event I'm going to share is a December 10th, 1962 road game. Coach, you remember that. He had scheduled this road game with the University of Wisconsin of the Big Ten. Wisconsin was ranked number 6 in the nation at the time. On this trip, we were going to be flying. It was the first plane trip that we had taken. And all of us were a little more than nervous. We boarded a DC-3 from Purdue Airlines at Holman Field for this trip to Madison. Wisconsin had great size and an All-American named Ken Siebel, 6'8", who I was assigned to guard. We were down 50-38 at halftime, Coach. And Coach gave us a plan at halftime, and we chipped away until we were down 86-85 on their court with little time left. Our great point guard, by the name of John Robin, gets a rebound and hits an 18-footer, and we win the game. We had 5 in double figures that night, as we did in most of the games that we played. It was a major upset, and did we celebrate? Beating the number 6 ranked team in the nation, and we weren't the only ones celebrating. On the return trip, the pilot announces that we are unable to land the plane. He said, "We will have to circle the field for a while." What had happened was that the ISU students and fans had taken over Holman's landing strip. It was finally cleared, and we landed safely to a very joyous crowd. In conclusion, I was very fortunate to have ISU in my hometown with exceptional mentors to teach me and guide me in all my endeavors. It was here that I learned goal setting and persistence to finish and never quit learning. The foundation of my life's philosophy of faith, family, and education was solidified during these 4 years. I can truly say that my time at Indiana State was truly priceless. Congratulations to all the inductees. I'm honored to be among you. Best wishes to all the athletes and coaches in 2019, and let's have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much.
Our next inductee into the 27th class, Miss Erica Moore.
Across the finish line first, Erica Moore unattacked.
All great athletes have that drive to be the best at everything they do, whether it's on the field or in the classroom. Erica Moore took that drive one step further. A native of Sullivan, Indiana, Erica came to Indiana State to set the world on fire. She was a 2-time NC2A All-American in 2010, a 4-time indoor and outdoor All-Missouri Valley Conference selection, and was named the MVC's Outdoor Championships Most Outstanding Women's Athlete in 2010. She was also a 3-time All-Valley Scholar Athlete.
She was tremendous. Like, working with her from a coach-athlete aspect, any workout I threw at her, she would try to kill it and do it better. There came to a point like her senior year where she ran with the guys part of the time. She had, people that were competitive around her all the time. In high school, playing basketball or track or anything she did, she wanted to be the best at it.
And in Erica, we knew we were getting a great athlete. We had remembered Erica when her dad would bring her and her brother to the summer program that we had. So we had watched her quite a bit, and we knew she was going to be really good.
Erica's name is in the record books at Indiana State to this day. School records in the indoor 600 meters, outdoor 400 meters, indoor pentathlon, and outdoor heptathlon. The problem for the coaches was what event to put her in, because she wanted to be the best.
We thought that, and I know when one of the conference meets, we made a huge mistake. I made a huge mistake, put her in too many things, spread her too thin, and I happened to see her dad the next week, and Jeff said to me, "Well, now you got the same problems we had with her. Which things do you put her in, and don't do too much." And so we kind of learned from that experience.
I was never sad or bummed that she broke my records. I was excited. I think for me, being able to coach her and work with her, I learned so much. She made me a way better coach than I ever was an athlete. I had to learn how to deal with, her emotions and my emotions and things. And I was really young when I started coaching her.
Erica was an Olympic trials participant twice in the 400-meter hurdles, was the USATF indoor champion in the 800 meters, and placed 3rd at the World Indoor Championships in the 800 meters. Give Erica Moore an event, and she was going to be the best at it. And now she's a member of the Indiana State Athletics Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, the newest member of the Hall of Fame, Miss Erica Moore.
Wow. So that was me in college, a little rough around the edges. Got it a little bit together now, but thank you so much to whoever had a part in putting together that video, who has had a hand in putting this event on. John Sherman, who we've exhausted his patience. We really appreciate it. I've been looking forward to this night for months. To have my family together is tremendously grateful for that, and to have all you guys here together. And for those of you who I don't know, really honored and grateful to be here. Spent a lot of time thinking about what to say, what there is to say, and there's too much. There's too much to say. I appreciate some of the prior inductees kind of covering some ground for me, some of the significance involved in our time here at ISU, I definitely share with them. As a writer, not a speaker, so bear with me, I'm racked by reality, always trying to be in search of it. But tonight it's very clear. I just feel especially honored and thankful. Especially lucky to have so much family here, have so many friends here, and to be a local is I think is extremely special. And that many of my coaches are still coaching here. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here tonight because it is always track season. But I'm glad they were able to be here in some form, be it through video or surrogate. I have a past teammate here who is now coaching here, Anthony Bertoli. who I've always been especially fond of, and it's a delight to see his face here tonight. Another qualified teammate who has flown in from Seattle, Rochelle Kimball. Thank you for being here. Yeah, so many of you have known me since I was Hurdle High. And many who were integral to my development, who unfortunately are not here, I will not be able to tell them how I feel about their role in my life, especially in my small and non-conforming maturing years as a college student. I didn't get to tell them how I felt, so I'll tell you. Coach McNichols, for those who don't know, was a tremendous coach, meaning he had successes successively over a very long career. But it's not that which each of us remembers so intimately, and it would take the rest of the night to describe his legacy and his character adequately. But for me, Coach McNichols had a fundamental philosophy that stuck with me. It wasn't fancy. It was repetition and attention, tenacity and discipline. Old school, I guess is what they call it. But to me, that's simply placing as much primacy on inner strength as outer strength. And as Hoosiers, I feel like we know how to do that. I grew up in small town Sullivan in a basketball gym, in lots of old basketball gyms, with a father who was a high school basketball coach. And so I knew old school, and I was down with that. We ran hurdle repeats. We'd run hurdle intervals for 60 to 90 minutes sometimes, and Bertoli can attest to this. It was questionably extensive. Everyone else would be gone from practice. And yet, because of Coach McNichols' apparent faith, none of us questioned it. He stood by us, and we stood by him. The other fundamental quality he had was attention. I can still see his eyes and his face very, very clearly and brightly. And that's because he gave himself to you like that. He was there with us, all of us, for every interval, always giving feedback, seeing us, keeping on us. And that was the Mad Hat trick up his sleeve. He knew the power of attention and concentration and, of course, discipline and faith. He never gave up for any reason on any of us. And if anyone knows the variables of love, those cover all of them. This is the difficulty of achieving anything truly good. It's the little things, it's the everyday repetition. And it's few people who choose the hard path of embodying such selflessness. And he's one of the few people that I can recall in my mind when I'm looking for that sort of strength still. Pete Jones is another mentor of mine who I'd be remiss not to mention with exceptional character. Some locals will know him, but he coached in Vigo County for essentially his whole life, his whole lifetime, and served the community there, and he's recently passed on as well. In the same way, he was able to say more with his actions than with his words, being selflessly attentive. And again, that's just so important for me to say, because those are the qualities that I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life, and they're not easy ones. 3 of my coaches, John Gartland, Angie Martin, and Jeff Martin, are still coaching, but like I said, are regretfully not here. Had the pleasure of having lunch with them yesterday, and for archival's sake, I will speak to them. When I came to ISU, John Gartland was the women's head coach. He had been the coach for decades. As it mentioned in the video, something about my uniform. We could go on and on about that, but he harangued me several months ago when I came to him, when I met with him on this occasion. And he said, "Now, Erica, you know you have to dress up for the ceremony." Remembering surely my historical irreverence for dress code during end-of-season ceremonies, picture days, press days, wearing my tie-dyed shirts and infamous pirate pants to practice. Kids. I may not have listened well back in college, except when it came to the track. Thank goodness, kept me out of a lot of trouble. But thank goodness for the tolerance of Coach John Gartland and really all of them. They've raised hundreds of kids at this point, and I can tell you that we do give them a hard time. John Gartland put up with us on a personal level, though. Others would agree he was a father figure. He would always ask, about family, about outside interests, about deeper experiences. And I'm just, again, John McNichols and John Gartland doesn't get any better than that. And speaking of kids, Jeff and Angie Martin. During my era, Angie was younger than I was when I started school. She was a long sprint coach, and Jeff, well, I barely had the pleasure of working with him, but he was the jumps coach. When I came here, they were just beginning their own lives together. Newlyweds, had a kid, had a second on the way in my time there. And I wasn't able to comprehend what that meant at the time, but now I realize what a great sacrifice that was for them. I remember the plastic playpen set up at the finish line as we looped around the track, and Jeff right there with his vaulters. And it wasn't always pretty. Screaming children all around you, really. What a trip that must have been. I just want to extend serious gratitude for how much sacrifice that they gave us during those seminal years. And that brings me to family. That's what family does. They juggle, they sacrifice, and I know my parents did too. 2 more young people, also younger than I am right now, raising 2 kids. I remember packed vans, both the stuffiness and sublimity of long car rides when mostly everyone was sleeping. Celebratory dinners, meeting other wonderful people on trips across the country, late nights, tired days, takeout. I am beyond words grateful for the total sacrifice my parents gave to me, for respecting my strong will, but while also guiding me. It's something I still have to deal with personally, so I do understand. And to a brother who's certainly toughened me up. I could tell lots of horror stories about our times at home alone. But I had one thing. I had one thing in my back pocket, and that was a very shrill scream. And that was it. So to any younger siblings out there, it works every time. Anyway, my brother, his tenacious attitude, his own athletic successes, that I'm sure were as contagious as the hip-hop tapes that I came to also get from him. His growth from an apathetic older brother who wouldn't let me hang out with him and his friends, to a supportive and loving one. Or it might have been my growth from an annoying little sister, not sure. So yeah, everyone at this table, my mother, Carol, my dad, Jeff and Julie, Nancy, my grandfather, my uncle Eric, my brother Jeffrey, and Andy. Thank you guys so much for being here. Yep, it's too great. It's too great an honor to be here. And I'm just really thankful. I hope you guys can see that through the awkwardness of my speech giving. But yeah, I just wish you all bright qualities of love and faith, and I will remember this forever, and I hope to be back to celebrate with you guys in the future. Thank you.
Erica, we did get John Gartland to say he made a mistake, which anybody in the track world can attest to. He's never done before, ever. All right, moving on. Our next inductee into the Hall of Fame, Dewan Alfonso. When it comes to the discussion of the best athletic ability to play at Indiana State, Dewan Alfonso's name comes right to the forefront of that conversation. A native of Indianapolis, Alfonso became a two-time All-Missouri Valley Conference selection in 1998 and 1999. He was named first-team All-American as a defensive back and a return specialist in 1999 and participated in the All-Star Gridiron Classic following his senior season. It was that athletic ability that everyone noticed.
I can tell you, Dewan was a multifaceted, could do anything. I mean, I never see a kid that could jump like he could jump. You know, I mean, obviously he played mostly defense for us, and he played a lot in the kick game, return game. But I know we threw him at receiver a couple times, and he could do that. A very gifted young man that physically could do about anything you want him to do.
Alfonso's name is all over the record books at Indiana State. He's first all-time in punt return average yardage. He's tied for first in block kicks, including having 3 in one season. He's fourth all-time in punt return yardage in a season and 8th all-time in career interceptions with 10. He feared no one, but put the fear into everyone he played against.
He could get it one of two ways. He had a tremendous takeoff, which allowed him to get a jump oftentimes on the snap. But the other thing that he could do is if you had a middle rush, his vertical jump was as good as any kid I've ever seen. And so you had a double-edged sword there if you were trying to use him to block a punt. He had great speed and takeoff coming from the side, and coming from the middle he could get up in the air, and you better get that ball up there quickly or he's going to get it.
After his college career, Alfonso went to training camp with the Baltimore Ravens in 2000, played in the Arena Football League from 2001 to 2008, and was a 4-time All-Ironman team selection and Ironman of the Year in 2010 for the Chicago Rush. Athletic ability through the roof, and now that ability has Dewan Alfonso entering the Indiana State Athletics Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, the newest member of the Hall of Fame, Mr. Dewan Alfonso.
Oh, man. I am not a good speech giver. I'm telling you that now. So I am nervous. Yeah, coming down here, I was telling my wife, like, you know, I like speaking from the heart. So, you know, over the years, I've spoke to a lot of kids, and it's easy for me to get up and talk that way. But to write a speech and actually get up and talk, it gives me anxiety. And she even said, she was like, I've never seen you that nervous in my life. I'm like, yeah, well, I really am. So, and then we were talking in hotels, like, oh, I hope I go first. And she was like, it never works that way. So here I am. And I definitely didn't want to follow Bob. So yeah, he got a standing ovation. So I didn't want to follow him. So anyway, I mean, this is very humbling to me. I'd like to thank Indiana State and everybody who nominated me to be here. I can't say it's a dream come true, because it was never in my dream to do this. You know, my dream was to just, you know, hopefully I get to play in college and get an education and move on with my life. But here we are, you know. It goes to show that, you know, hard work pays off, and dedication. And I'd just like to thank, you know, the president. We were talking earlier, and I love the direction that the school is going in. And I'll try to get here a little more often than just homecoming, but I like the new things that's going on. I'd like to thank the football coach for the nice gesture with the team, and, you know, from them. But anyway, so, you know, what football has meant to me. Football is always and will always be part of my life. Since I can remember, I've always loved this game. And to this day, I spend most Saturdays and Sundays with my son watching football. He's already gotten the privilege of seeing my passion for the game. You know, he watches me yell at the TV when the Colts are playing. You know, they can never do anything wrong, so, you know, I'm always yelling at the TV, and he gets the luxury of seeing that. Football has also brought me, you know, a lot of happiness. You know, I was all conference, all state in high school. I was all American in college. I was all pro in my professional ranks. I won an arena football championship, and to be here today, one of my biggest accomplishments, which, like I said, I never in a million years would think that I would be here. What football has also brought to me is lifelong friends. My friend Shay Caldwell, I met here. Very first night I was here, we met. It was camp, and we stayed in the quads, and we stayed up all night. Sorry, Coach. We stayed up all night dancing and hanging out, and from that day, it's been like my brother. And he flew in from 80-degree weather, Tampa, to come here. He messaged me, he was like, seriously, is it that cold there? I was like, yeah. He was like, well, I'm booking my flight anyway, I'm coming. I can't miss this for the world. So thank you for coming. I learned from football that nothing is given, it's earned. Hard work always pays off. And most importantly, everything I learned about being part of a team translates to having a successful life. If you take what you learn from being part of a team, you'll be a good person. It's a direct, you know, it works out the same way. I know this is a college honor. However, I do think that I'm here today from all three phases of the game, which is high school, college, and my professional career. With that being said, there are a few people I have a direct influence on my career and on my life. First, it was my mentor from high school. He was a police officer. He coached me my freshman year for basketball and football. He passed away a few years ago. But he taught me that hard work will always pay off, and being a good person and a good teammate goes hand in hand. An interesting story is that, I don't know if you know this, Coach Rates, but when you guys got my highlight tape from high school, I was so nervous, like I am now, about speaking, he actually did the voiceover on my tape. So if you still have it, go back and listen to it, and you'll see that it wasn't me. But that's what kind of man he was. You know, he took the initiative. He knew that I was uncomfortable, and that's what he did, and he will truly be missed. Another person I would like to thank this here now is my friend, my best friend, my brother, Ron Barnes, who's sitting over there. Raise your hand. You know, we don't pick our family, you know, and if I could pick somebody to be part of my family, it would definitely be him. And we were talking the other day, and I was saying that it's too bad that you can't legally adopt a brother, you know. So I was telling him, you know, that if I could, then I would. He was that friend that would stop everything he was doing to make sure that I got to practice, got to any competition, or even just got to the mall. Even if it was borrowing somebody's car without their permission. Borrowing. He told me when I left for college, I want you to only focus on football in school, and I will take care of everything else. And that's exactly what he did. The day I knew I loved this game, I shared with him in the Indiana State locker room after a loss to Eastern Illinois. Time was running out. It was, Eastern Illinois was up by 7. It was 21-14. We called a timeout. I went to the sideline. I said, told my team, I'm gonna block this kick. So just be prepared to pick the ball up and return it for a touchdown. We go back in, they snap the ball, I block the kick. It bounces off one of my teammates' face mask. They recover the ball. At the time, I didn't know the rule. I thought since we blocked it, we would get the ball back no matter what. Little did I know. They recovered the ball, they got the first down, ran the clock out. I was in the locker room, and I was very emotional. I was pacing back and forth, and somehow he gets in the locker room. I have no clue how he's in the locker room, but he's the only person in the locker room that wasn't a coach or a team or Bob. And he comes up to me, and he sees I'm very emotional about this play because I thought we were cheated. He puts his arms around me and tells me, just let it go. And as soon as he said that, I cried for 10 minutes. And that was the moment that I knew that this was supposed to be what I'm doing. I'd just like to say thank you, and I appreciate everything you've done for me. I love you. So, give him a round. Everybody who played for him knows this. Move it up 20 yards. Rev it up. Let's go. That's Coach Rates right there. Fair guy. Expected the most out of his players. I appreciate everything that you've done for me. You taught me. You recruited me. Some small kid from Indiana. I know I'm big up here, but when I graduated from high school, I was 5'10", 165 pounds. And they took a chance on me. And I'm glad you did. Yeah, because I didn't have many options, so thank you. Coach Rates. Although Coach McGuire isn't here, he was my second head coach while I was here. And he actually came down to Tech High School to speak with me and speak with my mom and offer me a scholarship to come here and play. His favorite saying as a defensive coordinator, Crowder, you know this, Scally, we're going to blitz, we're going to blitz them, and we're going to blitz some more. And then we get to the game, we didn't blitz at all. I think the only one got to blitz was Matt Graham. So anyway, Coach McGuire was a great coach. He was my defensive coordinator. He was ended up being my head coach. Always been a good guy. I spoke to him a couple years ago about my nephew who was struggling at a college and wanted to transfer, and he gave me some really good advice for him, so I could always count on him. So I thank him for that. Sorry I couldn't be here, but I would like to thank him too. To one of my favorite people I've met on my football journey, Coach Mike Owens. Stand up, Coach. He was my head coach for the Chicago Rush that I played for 10 years. And he is truly one of the best coaches, fathers, husbands, and just genuinely a good person. He always treated me like family. He taught me that it was more important to be a great student of the game and not just rely on athletic ability, which in turn made me a better player and made my career last longer than my athleticism did. So, you know. Coach O, I'd like to thank you for helping me be a better player and a world champion. But more importantly, thanks for helping me become a better man. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I would like to thank all my friends and fellow teammates that came here to celebrate with me. You know, without those guys, it's no me. I mean, football is the ultimate team sport. You can't do it by yourself. All of those kicks and stuff that I blocked that Coach Rates alluded to wasn't just me. It was preparation. It was the coach telling me what block point. It was linemen doing their job, cutting down the offensive linemen to give me an opportunity to get up in the air. It was the defensive end pinning down so I can get off the edge to block a kick. It was the guys doing their job on special teams. It was the offensive linemen doing their job, the linebackers being in the right spot that allowed me to get interceptions. It wasn't just about me. It was a team effort, and I have to give my condolences, not condolences, but I would like to give thanks to all my former teammates. Thank you. To my family, my sister, I think she's with my son actually over there, and he's tearing up everything. So, my mom always told me when I get a son that he's going to be just like me, and there it is right there. So I wouldn't want it any different. But my sister here, Nikita, my other sister that couldn't make it, Treva, my pops, Vi, you guys piled up plenty of times to come and support me in the car. From driving down Highway 70, flying to Orlando for the All-Star game, driving back and forth up 65 to Chicago to support me when I played for the Rush, flying to Vegas to see me win the championship, crying with me in defeat and victories. We had some great times, and we will always have those memories to share. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I love you. Thank you. Whew, man, I don't understand. I'm hot up here. And to my mom. Mom, I love you. More than you will ever even know. I know I don't say it all the time, but I really love you. And I know we have our battles, our ups and downs, and we collide a lot, but we're basically identical twins. That's why we bump heads a lot, Both of us are stubborn, we stuck in our ways, and it's hard to change us. But I really do appreciate everything that you've given me, everything that you've taught me. When I was younger, it was me, you, and my two sisters, and I saw how hard you worked. Going to work every day, being the mom and the father. And your efforts and your strength is what taught me to be strong and go for what I want. And, man, sorry, but it's tough, We had a rough road, but here we are today. We celebrate, and that's what it's about. It's about where you came from and how you how you persevere and where you go. And here we are at this Hall of Fame, and I couldn't be more proud and honored that I can share this with you and with my family. And with that being said, it's over. Thank you.
We'll get it. Our final induction this evening to the 27th class, Mr. Bill Hodges.
All we wanted this year was a chance to go to the NCAA and participate. We knew we could play with those people. We wanted to show them what kind of team we had, what we were made of. There weren't any doubts around here. Our fans, friends throughout the Midwest knew what we were all about. Now we had to go out and win the whole country to our way of
Usually
thinking.
when you become a head college basketball coach, it's because someone got let go or they moved on. But for Bill Hodges, it came when a friend, Bob King, became ill and could not return to the bench. Bill Hodges took the challenge head on, with a team returning that many believe could make some noise in the Missouri Valley Conference. He made the noise go national. Led by National Player of the Year Larry Bird and future NBA player Carl Nicks, his 78-79 team took the nation by storm, winning 33 straight before falling in the national title game. It was his let the players play style, sprinkled in with hard-nosed play, that got the Sycamores to.
Well, he was on a team that went to the finals. You know, anytime that always helps. And Hodges did well for us. And I really don't know what happened to him after I left, because I so consumed with the pro game, I really didn't follow it that much. But and I don't see him very often. But I hope he's doing well. And yes, he is deserving, because putting a team like that together and spur of the moment, then have to coach that team, did a pretty good job, yes.
Hodges guided the Sycamores to the only regular season and tournament championship in the same year in school history. He went 67-48 during his time at Indiana State and was named Coach of the Year by the Valley, Associated Press, United Press International, and the Sporting News in 1979.
Bill Hodges, a lot of us wouldn't be here, including Larry maybe. You know, I know he was totally responsible for me being here. It's definitely deserved. I thought that as a young coach, he came in, he did a great job. He was able to relate. The most important thing that I like about what he did, he let you play your game.
Bill Hodges is already a member of the Hall of Fame, inducted with his team in 2000. But the man who accepted the challenge left by his friend is now an individual member of the Indiana State Athletics Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, the newest member of the Hall of Fame, head coach Bill Hodges.
For those of you who know me, you know I'm not a public speaker. I promised my daughter that I'd keep it clean. My daughter Zoe, who has her doctorate and she teaches English, couldn't make it. She only had a day and a half left, sick days. My son Matt, who spent 14 years in the Army and after his second tour in Iraq, was medically discharged. And he is in charge of like 5 of the golf courses at the villages, and he couldn't get away either. But I promised I'd say hello to you. They both called today. Dr. Curtis, who I met last week, Sherrod Clinkscales, John Sherman, an ace, did a fabulous job last week. I wish you could have all been there. I'm sure a lot of you were, but we had a heck of a reunion and enjoyed it thoroughly. As for being honored in the Hall of Fame, when John Sherman first called, and I'm sure he doesn't want me to tell this story, but he told me that it was the second, I don't know whether you'd call it funny or hilarious, but it was the second best thing that anybody had said when he called them and told them they'd been nominated for the Hall of Fame. My close friend, Edie Godleski, who used to call me when she was a great golfer and I wasn't, and she'd call me to play mixed doubles with her. When he called her to tell her she had been nominated for the Hall of Fame, she said it was about damn time. He called me not this past summer, but the summer before. And the induction was supposed to be in October, and of course, we were making plans, and then he called and said they had changed it to January. I said, Coach, I can't make it. I'm still coaching. You know, I was coaching the girls' team at the local high school, which my granddaughter played on. And we had tournament games that week. We were in the district tournament, which we won, and I couldn't come. So he called this summer and said, can you come now? I had retired from coaching, finally. I'll be 76 next month, and I thought it might be time. Anyway, when he called the first time and said, you've been nominated for the Hall of Fame here at Indiana State, and I kind of chuckled. And I said, is Dr. Landini dead? And he started laughing and said, as a matter of fact, he is. When I came here in 1975, and I had quite a bit of experience recruiting, and Coach King hired me as the second assistant. And I was supposed to just recruit Indiana. Well, I ended up recruiting everything. And, you know, I had Chicago, Indiana, all the junior colleges. And I really feel like being inducted into the Hall of Fame as a head coach is a misnomer, you know. Now, I would be honored if I was being inducted as an assistant coach, because that's where I did my best work. You know, Coach King, with his advice, we put together a heck of a team. And that team, when he had his aneurysm surgery and couldn't coach anymore, took us all the way to Salt Lake City. Great group of kids. It was unbelievable, the chemistry on that team. And a lot of people thought Larry Bird was the leader. He was the leader by example, but anytime they wanted anything, and anytime that I had to be talked to, or anybody had to be talked to, it was Brad Miley that did the talking. And he texted me and said, call me. And I texted him back, I didn't know the number. I said, who is this? He texted me back and he said, the best defensive player you ever coached. I texted him back, said, is this Danny King? He didn't like that at all. You know, when I came here in 1975, I'd been to Terre Haute to play baseball. Actually, we played an American Legion game and Tommy John was pitching against us. He hit me right in the hip. I had those stitches on my hip for about 3 weeks. So I'd been to Terre Haute. I knew Terre Haute a little bit. You know, I grew up, you know, on a farm just north of Zionsville. I went to Zionsville High School, played for Jim Rosensteel, who's a Hall of Fame coach. And so, you know, I was really looking forward to it. And I grew to absolutely love Terre Haute and Indiana State. Every hour, every minute I spent here, I loved. And it was really unfortunate, you know, the first year that we won 33 and lost 1, and everything was downhill from then. You know, how do you get better than that? And, you know, my personal life fell apart, and I ended up divorced. It was just really, really difficult. And, you know, I found then, and, you know, I think I've grown an awful lot since then, that it's not how far you fall, it's how well you get up. And I got up, I got another job finally, brought them back to Terre Haute and beat Indiana State right over here, where Dr. Landini had to shake my hand. You know he's rolling over his grave right now. You know, you don't build anything without support. And people, you probably don't have any idea what it took to put that team together. But it wasn't just me, it wasn't just Bob King, it was the people at this university. I'll probably forget someone, but I won't forget these guys. Bill Osmond. Bill can't get out much anymore, so he couldn't come. Jerry Heil. John Newton. John's here. First time I knew who Larry Bird was, and I went to John and said, give me a list of all the students that we got at Indiana State from French Lick, Springs Valley High School. And one of the top ones on that list was a guy named Tony Clark. He'd played high school ball with Larry, and he helped me recruit him. You know, people don't know these things. Carl Parks, one of my favorites. And then the great help that I had, Bob Benke, and I spent last evening with Bob, had dinner, we told stories. He was probably one of the best trainers in the United States. He was the head of the National Trainers Association, but people don't know those things. Doc Hetherington. I asked Doc why he retired one time, and he had a drink in his hand. He said, well, I was doing brain surgery, and I thought it might be about time. And Bob's right and left-hand man, Rickshaw. Stand up, Rickshaw. Rick's still mad at me for yelling at him when we were playing at New Mexico State and Bobby Heaton hit that shot from midcourt. And Mel Daniel, we'd had a timeout and told the kids what we wanted them to do. We had no idea that, you know, I was worried about our next game, you know, and I was trying to keep everything positive. And so I said, okay, when we get the rebound, this kid misses this shot, we get the rebound, you get it to midcourt and just turn around and shoot it. Steve Reed was on one side and Bobby was on the other. So Brad gets the ball, hits Bobby, Bobby banks it. And, you know, that was 2 points back then. Mel Daniels looked at me and said, okay, genius, what are you going to do next? Because we got Larry Bird, Carl Nix, and Alex Gilbert all on the bench. And I said, well, we're going to put Eric Curry in and get the tip first of all. Then we'll see what happens from there. So we get, you know, I talked to the guys, say, okay, we're going to use the clock a little bit, make sure we pass the ball 8 times before we shoot. So we passed it about 7 times. Brad Miley jumps up and hits a 15-footer. How many of you know how well Brad shoots? I looked at Mel and said, we're winning this game. But that's our support system. And Rick Shaw's still mad at me for yelling at him because when we had the timeout, he'd put up the blackboard. And I started yelling at him, you give up, you gave up. You know, and thinking, you know, the kids, you know, be real, get them positive. And Rick Shaw never forgave me for that. It takes other people's support too. I'll never forget, we went to the Saratoga every morning, 7 o'clock, for coffee. And they kind of accepted me down there. You know, I went down with Bob King. He didn't go very often. And we were sitting there, and Don Smith was, you know, sitting next to me. And everybody at the table at the Saratoga was, you know, you could be a custodian at a local place, and you were just as important as Don Smith, who was probably one of the wealthiest guys in town and the president of the First National Bank. And I said, you know, I need some advice on where to buy a house. Don Smith looked at me and says, buy one with wheels, son. I never forgotten that. But, you know, recruiting, I could drive. I was very seldom ever at a game as an assistant. I was at practices, but I was on the road a lot recruiting and scouting. Back then, you didn't have film exchange. And Don Smith, Jerry Manley, furnished planes. Max Gibson, they flew us. You know, I'd get Bob King on the plane, you know, make sure he got to see who we were recruiting. And they flew us all over the place. Max isn't here tonight. His son's being inducted in the Hall of Fame for track in the high school Hall of Fame. He ran track at North. Most of you know Greg. So Max isn't here, but he was a huge supporter, and anything I needed as far as his plane or a job for a kid during the summer, he would help us with. But there was another guy that is here tonight, and I have a special affinity for him and his wife, because they furnished me a car the whole time I was here. Dick Leonard, where you at, Dick? George Ann, stand up. See, it's those kind of people that help us build what we built. But the Bill Osmonds, the guys in the administration here, we had coffee with them at least once a week. They did the bulk of helping us. Anytime I needed to know, can this kid get in school? Now, back then, we didn't have the progression rule that they have now. You know, a kid, as long as he passed 12 hours a semester, he was eligible. Now, you have to make that 12 hours toward your degree. I don't know if DeCarsta would have been eligible back then. Yeah, he might have had a hard time today. You know, a lot of people ask me why I left Indiana State, and I'm always honest with them. You know, I said, well, I left because of illness. What? I said, yeah, the president was sick of me. You know, the one thing it took me a while to learn was patience. patience in hiring, patience in accepting a job, patience in dealing with the kids, and, you know, patience with everything in life. And I think I learned that. Took me a long time. But I learned that you have to hire the right people, because it's not the head coach that's going to be on the front line. It's those assistant coaches. And I felt like I did a bang-up job as an assistant. And I think Coach King was a heck of a mentor and a heck of a head coach. When he wasn't here, you know, we used his defense, and when I had problems in the middle of the year, I went and got him. And you know, I mean, he had recovered from surgery, but he had a problem with his short-term memory. And I set him up in the stand and said, Coach, I got to know why we're not getting the ball where we want it on defense, because he's a heck of a defensive coach. Now, offense, I went with my high school coaches, and that's, hey, give it to your best players and let them go. And he sat up there about 30 minutes, said, come here, and told me exactly what we were doing wrong. We corrected it. We were tougher than nails the rest of the year. So, you know, you got to have that mentor that can give you the advice when you need it. I read this morning's paper. Didn't like what I read, because, you know, you put your kids on the floor and it's not all about statistics. It's about leadership. And every team doesn't have a Brad Miley or a Carl Nix or a Danny King or a Jimmy Smith. They were great leaders. And if you don't have a leader, you know, I've had teams without one, it's tough. You know, you're fortunate if you win games. So that's what you have to look at when you go recruiting. Today's game's different. You gotta have a big inside presence. They gotta be able to pass it outside, and you gotta have 4 shooters. Brad he'd have been mad at me. He wouldn't have got to play as much this year as he might have back then. Because back then you wanted 2 great rebounders and defensive players, and he's one of the best rebounders I've ever known. And he was the best defensive player that ever could play for me. Back then, 3 people could do the scoring. And you can't do that now. You've got to have those shooters. I want to thank those who were on the committee. You know, I'm not like Edie. I didn't think I would be in the Hall of Fame. And I am quite honored. But I think it was because of my assistant coaching that I'm here. And thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, how about one more big round of applause for our 27th class into the Hall of Fame. With some closing remarks on tonight's event, my pleasure to introduce to you the Director of Athletics at Indiana State, Mr. Sherrod Clinkscales.
I promise I will be brief. First of all, I just want to just say thank you, John. You did a tremendous job organizing this. Well done. Thank you. One person I want to recognize that we just didn't mention her name earlier, Linda McNichols. Would you mind standing up, please? I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize our president. You know, being an athletic director, you're always, can be sometimes challenging, always asking for things and wanting things. And I'm very fortunate to have a president that really is patient with me and has really works with our athletic department. And I just want to say thank you, Dr. Curtis, for your patience and for supporting us. So thank you very much. Bob, Erica, Dewan, Bill, Steve, Peter, Tom, Rich, and Errol, it's an honor to recognize you for all your wonderful achievements. Your dedication to your craft has left an indelible mark on this university. You have all played a big part in ISU's strong history of athletic success. It is our charge to uphold and build upon that mantle to ensure our student athletes earn a degree, win Missouri Valley Conference championships, and compete in the NCAA championship. I'd like to leave you with a quote. "The past cannot be changed. Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. Gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for our today, and creates a vision for tomorrow." Good night, have a safe trip home, and march on.